Buckingham Palace. They have released a statement saying that His Majesty the King has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honours of Prince Andrew. Now, this, of course, comes after weeks and weeks of speculation and controversy about Prince Andrew. He relinquished most of his official titles.
If you want the unfiltered truth about what is really happening behind palace walls, you need to smash that subscribe button and hit the notifications bell icon right now. This is UK Informate, where we serve up royal drama hotter than your morning cuppa. Now, let us talk about the bombshell that just rocked the monarchy. Imagine being booted out of your sprawling 30-room mansion, stripped of your princely status, and sent packing to the countryside to live in obscurity, all courtesy of your own brother. That is not a plot line from some over-the-top period drama. That is Prince Andrew's actual reality, and King Charles just delivered the ultimate royal eviction notice. The question everyone is asking now is not whether this was necessary. It absolutely was. But rather, why on earth did it take this long? Charles has finally done what many believed should have happened years ago. He has effectively banished Andrew from the monarchy. The now former prince will be leaving Royal Lodge, his palatial residence in the heart of the Windsor estate, and relocating to a considerably more modest property on the king's private Sandringham estate. For a man who has spent decades reveling in the trappings and privileges of royal life, this is nothing short of catastrophic. It is the ultimate humiliation, and frankly, it has been brewing for quite some time. Let us be crystal clear about what triggered this seismic decision. The monarchy had been under absolutely relentless pressure to address the Andrew situation, particularly following renewed public fury over his ties to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. When Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir dropped, detailing allegations of sexual abuse, which Andrew has repeatedly denied, the scandal reached a boiling point that Charles could no longer ignore. The palace was essentially sitting on a powder keg, and that memoir was the lit match. 2 weeks before the bombshell announcement, Andrew had already given up his titles and honors, more than 5 years after initially stepping back as a working royal. He claimed he was putting duty to my family and country first, which is a lovely sentiment, except it did absolutely nothing to stop the snowballing scandal. The public was not buying it, politicians were not satisfied, and the pressure continued mounting like a royal-themed pressure cooker about to explode. Then came Thursday evening, and Buckingham Palace dropped an announcement so brusque it practically had "we are done playing games" written all over it. Andrew was to lose his princely status immediately, becoming plain old Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a commoner, just like the rest of us peasants. The palace statement made it abundantly clear that this was the king's decision. Andrew had no choice in the matter, and there was even a notable expression of solidarity with abuse victims. That last bit was significant because it signaled the palace was finally acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations rather than just trying to sweep everything under an extraordinarily expensive royal carpet. Royal historian Kate Williams called Charles's decision unprecedented, and she is absolutely right. Not since the abdication crisis of 1936 has there been such a public casting aside of a senior British royal. To put this in perspective, we are talking about a level of royal drama that generations of historians will be dissecting for decades to come. Williams pointed out that whilst historical figures like Henry VIII stripped his daughters of their titles, only to change his mind later because Henry was nothing if not dramatically inconsistent, Andrew's situation is different because he has been censured due to serious errors of judgment involving genuinely disturbing allegations. The political response was swift and overwhelmingly supportive. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch acknowledged that whilst this must have been a difficult decision for Charles to act against his own sibling, it was clearly the right one for the royal family. The Liberal Democrats leader was even more direct, calling Andrew's situation totally untenable and stating he had disgraced his office and embarrassed the country. Ouch! That is not just political commentary. That is a complete demolition of whatever reputation Andrew had left. For weeks leading up to this announcement, royal watchers had sensed something significant was coming. It was not a question of if, but when. Royal sources indicated that Charles was consulting legal and constitutional experts, trying to navigate the complicated process of essentially firing his own brother from the family fame. The fact that he had the support of the wider family, including Prince William, suggests this was not just Charles acting unilaterally. This was a coordinated family decision to cut Andrew loose before he dragged everyone down with him. But here's where things get properly complicated. For many people, particularly critics of the monarchy, these moves do not go nearly far enough. Graham Smith, chief executive of the anti-monarchy campaign group Republic, put it bluntly, losing silly titles is not an answer to very serious accusations of sexual offenses and corruption in public office. He argued that this is not about William and Charles taking a tough line. It is about them protecting their own positions by creating as much distance as possible between themselves and Andrew. Smith wants to see Andrew face actual justice, because the fundamental principle that royals are not above the law needs to be reinforced, not just given lip service. Despite being stripped of his prince title, Andrew remains eighth in line to the throne, which feels rather absurd when you think about it. He is also receiving a house on the king's private Sandringham estate, and will continue receiving an income from Charles. So whilst this is undoubtedly humiliating for Andrew, he is hardly being thrown onto the streets. He is moving from one royal property to another, just a considerably less impressive one, and he is doing so after Christmas to avoid potential holiday awkwardness at Sandringham, where the family traditionally gathers. Nothing says you are in disgrace quite like being uninvited from Christmas dinner, does it? His ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who has been living with Andrew at Royal Lodge for the past 2 decades, is also moving out and making her own arrangements. Their daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, will retain their titles as daughters of the son of a sovereign, in line with a directive issued by King George V back in 1917. So the fallout is contained to Andrew himself, which is probably as surgical as Charles could make this operation. The unavoidable question remains, is this too little, too late? For years, the royal family appeared to shield Andrew, allowing him to maintain his position and privileges long after his association with Epstein became public knowledge. The fact that it took a posthumous memoir and sustained public outrage to finally force action does not exactly inspire confidence in the monarchy's ability to self-regulate. Charles is doing what he can within his royal prerogative, but for many, the damage to the monarchy's reputation has already been done. You cannot simply erase years of protecting someone from consequences and expect the public to immediately forget. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep it royal.